This is a video about how much I dislike poorly designed wheel nuts. And so these nuts came off of a 2009 Ford Fusion, but I've seen this style on many cars that are 2007 and newer, and they are the factory nuts, and they actually say, it's hard to read from the camera, but it says metric, and then there's like a number 1 or a letter L below it. And they're the tapered style where they go in and center the rim on the hub. By when you spin it, it centers the rim. Problem with these nuts is the outer surface is aluminum or some kind of alloy like that. Might not be aluminum because that might be pretty soft, but anyway, some kind of corrosion resistant surface, and then underneath is the steel nut. So the outside is the pretty part, the inside is the functional part. So it says metric on it, and this one fits right inside of my 19 mil socket, and there's no real significant play. This is a 19 mil socket. Now, just for interest sake, I have a 3/4 inch socket right beside it, and 3/4 inch sockets, it'll also fit in there, and it's hard to tell which one it fits better. But since it says metric, I know that it's supposed to be the 19 mil one. This is another one of the sockets. Now it doesn't drop in all the way, so that's interesting. Here's one, and it does drop in all the way to the 3/4. So that tells me the 3/4 inch is just slightly larger than 19 mil. I didn't do the math, but obviously it is. Now, as these nuts age, the space between the steel part and this alloy on the outside that doesn't rust, corrosion will form in there. And also, as the impact wrenches work on these nuts over the years, if you get them changed 4 or 5 times, the impact nut actually bangs on this outer edge of the pretty material, corrosion resistant material, and stretches it ever so slightly. But when you have 6 surfaces and they all stretch a little bit, they get bigger and bigger. Now what happens is, over time you'll start to notice, well, that one doesn't have any cracks. The first thing you'll notice is the sockets don't go on them anymore very well. And as it gets worse, they'll go on less and less. This one, that's as far as it'll go. Then if you have a closer inspection, you'll see cracks in this outer coating. And there's a crack. That one doesn't have any cracks. There's a pretty major crack. So it doesn't take very long for these things to look not very pretty. And then eventually what happens is, in order to get a good bite on the, get your socket on there, you either have to pound the socket on the nut, which is not great because then you eventually have to get the nut out of the socket. And when you're doing it on, say, 5 per wheel and 4 wheels per car, that's 20 nuts. What you end up doing, just for time's sake, is you push the socket on with your impact wrench, undo it 80% of the way, and then try to get your socket out before you actually, release the nut from the stud totally, because then it's really hard to get out. So you end up taking your impact wrench and moving it back and forth, and that stresses out the little part of the impact wrench that goes in there. And I know it's a tough tool, but you do that over and over again. I mean, ultimately they do wear, and you're accelerating the wear tremendously by putting that torque on your impact gun. And they're not designed to handle that kind of a torque anyway. They're designed for rotational torque of the input to a socket. They're not designed to be stressed like this. Now, I'm sure they can take it, but it's just stupid. Anyway, eventually what will happen is, when these get bad enough, like that, they'll shatter, and now the socket just spins on there. And you can't get a 19 mil socket on there. You got to get a bigger one on to fit it over the edge, and it'll probably just spin. So what I've seen sometimes is the outer coating will spin on the inner coating, or you just can't get a good socket on there. I can't get a bite on it at all. So what you have to do then is use side cutters or a chisel or something and get that coating out of there, and then you can use a smaller socket on the real stud that's underneath. So I've recommended to people that have this problem, throw these nuts away. They're just going to cause you trouble and leave you on the side of the road someday when you're trying to change a tire. They're garbage, and they just deserve to be right in the recycle bin. Okay, there's my rant on wheel nuts and why they should not have this pretty coating on the outside.